Hey everyone, tonight we embark upon a tale of tactical brilliance and galactic shadows, where the greatest military mind the Empire ever produced wages a secret war beyond the edges of known space. This is the story of Grand Admiral Thrawn and the dark force rising from the unknown regions, a legend that will reshape everything you thought you knew about the galaxy far, far away. So before we journey into the depths of this epic, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you truly enjoy these immersive stories I craft for you. And here's something interesting. About 86% of you incredible listeners who watch these videos haven't subscribed yet. If you're finding peace and adventure in these tales, hitting that subscribe button would mean the world to me and help this channel grow. Also, if you're captivated by epic fantasy and political intrigue, I've just launched a new channel called The Raven's Tales, dedicated entirely to Game of Thrones stories and the rich lore of Westeros. You'll find the link waiting in the description below. I'm genuinely excited to read your comments about where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. There's something magical about knowing our community spans across continents and time zones, all gathered here for the same ancient art of storytelling. Now settle in, dim those lights, and let your mind prepare for a journey beyond the galactic rim. In the dying light of twin suns over a world whose name has been erased from every star chart, a figure stood silhouetted against crimson sky. His red eyes gleamed like burning coals as he studied the holographic display floating before him, showing not star destroyers or battle formations, but something far more precious, something that would make emperors weep and republics tremble. Ancient art pieces, each one a key to unlocking the tactical weaknesses of entire species. But this was no ordinary Imperial commander. This was the one they called the heir to the Empire. The blue-skinned genius who could read the soul of his enemies through their sculptures and paintings, who could predict their every move by understanding the deepest currents of their culture. The hologram flickered, revealing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. New Republic convoys destroyed with surgical precision, Imperial remnants moving with coordination that defied all logic. Worlds falling to an enemy that struck without warning and vanished like ghosts into hyperspace. Yet something ancient stirred in the unknown regions, something that made even this master strategist pause. For beyond the edge of the galaxy, older threats were stirring, threats that would make the Emperor's reign seem like a child's game. And only one mind was brilliant enough, ruthless enough, and far-seeing enough to prepare the galaxy for what was coming. The crimson light faded as the twin suns set, and in the gathering darkness, Grand Admiral Thrawn smiled. The game was about to begin, and this time, the stakes were nothing less than the survival of every living soul in the galaxy. But that is a tale for the telling, and some secrets must be earned through the long journey ahead. 5 years have passed since the second Death Star exploded in brilliant fire above the forest moon of Endor. 5 years since the Emperor's cackling laughter was silenced forever, and Darth Vader found redemption in his final breath. The galaxy struggles to heal from the wounds of civil war, like a patient recovering from a fever that nearly claimed its life. On Coruscant, the jewel world that once served as the Empire's beating heart, massive construction droids work day and night to repair the scars left by decades of authoritarian rule. Where once the Emperor's throne room cast its shadow over a cowering populace, now the provisional government of the New Republic meets in chambers filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds, their voices raised not in fear, but in the messy, beautiful chaos of democracy being born. You walk through these reconstructed corridors as a senior analyst for New Republic intelligence, your footsteps echoing against walls that have witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Your office overlooks the Senate district, where alien ambassadors and human diplomats work side by side, trying to forge unity from the ashes of tyranny. The air itself seems different here now, no longer heavy with the oppressive weight of the dark side, but somehow lighter, filled with hope and possibility. Yet in the quiet moments between briefings when the city lights twinkle like distant stars and the traffic streams flow in ribbons of light far below, you cannot shake the feeling that something watches from the shadows. Intelligence reports cross your desk daily, each one a piece of a puzzle that refuses to form a complete picture. Imperial remnants still lurk in the outer rim, some say, led by ambitious Moffs and bitter admirals who refuse to accept that their empire has crumbled to dust. Your companion in these investigations is Commander Senna Voss, a former Imperial intelligence officer who defected to the rebellion during the dark days before Endor. Her knowledge of Imperial protocols and hidden networks has proven invaluable, but there are nights when you catch her staring out at the city lights with an expression you cannot quite read, as if she knows secrets that she dare not speak aloud. Senna enters your office now, her usually composed features marked by concern. In her hands, she carries a datapad containing reports that arrived on the fastest courier ships from across the galaxy. Reports that speak of something unprecedented, something that defies every tactical doctrine taught in Imperial academies or rebel war rooms. The Imperial attacks, when they come, are like nothing the galaxy has ever seen. They strike with precision that borders on prophecy, as if their commanders can peer into the very souls of their enemies and predict their responses before they are even conceived. Republic convoys disappear without a trace, their escort fighters found days later drifting in space, their pilots speaking of ships that moved like dancers, like artists painting destruction across the void. More disturbing still are the artifacts left behind at each attack site. Holographic art pieces, sculptures from worlds both familiar and unknown, paintings that seem to capture the essence of entire civilizations in brushstrokes of light. No Imperial commander in recorded history has ever shown such interest in culture, in the artistic expressions of the species they conquered. It suggests a mind unlike any the Empire has produced, a strategist who sees war not as mere conquest, but as a form of terrible, beautiful art. From her position near the great transparistile windows, Senna speaks in the clipped tones of her former service, though her words carry undertones of something deeper, something that might be fear. She tells you of whispers from the intelligence networks, rumors of a figure emerging from the unknown regions, a commander whose very name has been erased from Imperial records, but whose tactical genius burns like a cold flame in the stories shared by survivors. The unknown regions stretch beyond the galactic rim like an ocean of mystery, filled with worlds that have never felt the touch of Republic or Imperial rule. Ancient hyperspace routes end in stellar graveyards, and explorers who venture too far return speaking of things that should not exist, if they return at all. It is from this realm of shadows and secrets that the new threat emerges, bringing with it the scent of something far older and more dangerous than the petty ambitions of Moffs and warlords. Tonight, as you stand beside Commander Voss and gaze out at the city that represents the galaxy's hope for peace, you know that your investigation is about to lead you into the heart of that darkness, into mysteries that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the nature of power, strategy, and the price of survival in a universe far stranger than anyone dares imagine. The morning brings with it reports that chill the blood and confound the mind. Commander Voss spreads holographic displays across the briefing table, each one showing the wreckage of what were once proud Republic vessels. The Corellian merchant convoy Bright Promise lies scattered across 3 star systems, its cargo holds emptied with surgical precision while its crew remains mysteriously unharmed but traumatized. The escorts speak of enemy ships that seem to anticipate their every tactical maneuver, vessels that dance through their defensive formations as if their commanders had studied Republic naval doctrine for decades. But it is not merely the tactical superiority that unsettles the intelligence analysts gathered in this secure chamber deep within the government complex. Each attack site yields artifacts that speak to a mind unlike any in Imperial service. Holographic recreations of Corellian sand sculptures appear where the convoy's main freighter once carried grain to the Outer Rim colonies. Three-dimensional maps of Sullust's volcanic art installations materialize in the debris field where Admiral Akbar's personal courier met its end. You lean forward, studying the tactical readouts that make no sense according to conventional Imperial doctrine. The attacking fleet moved in formations that resembled the flowing scripts of ancient Alderaanian poetry, their approach vectors tracing patterns that mirror the architectural principles of Naboo's royal palaces. No Imperial commander has ever shown such intimate knowledge of alien cultures, such profound understanding of the artistic expressions that define entire civilizations. The journey to investigate these attacks takes you beyond Coruscant's protective fleet formations, past the bustling trade routes where Republic merchants ply their goods under the watchful eyes of Mon Calamari cruisers. Your transport vessel, a modified diplomatic courier named Seeker's Dream, carries you toward the Corellian system where the most recent attack occurred. Through the viewports, hyperspace streams past in familiar patterns of blue and white, but even this routine travel feels different now, charged with the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy's vast expanse, an unknown enemy plans and waits. Corellia's shipyards have long been the backbone of galactic civilization, their massive construction platforms birthing everything from simple cargo haulers to the mighty capital ships that once served the old Republic. Now these facilities work around the clock to replace the vessels lost to this mysterious new threat, their foundries glowing like captured stars against the planet's industrial skyline. Docking Bay 94 receives your courier with the efficiency born of centuries of practice, though you notice the increased security patrols and the nervous energy that crackles through the facility's corridors. Captain Coran Horn of the Corellian Security Force meets you at the customs checkpoint, his weathered face bearing the lines of a man who has seen too much violence in too short a time. His reputation precedes him throughout the galaxy, a former Imperial pilot who found his conscience and joined the rebellion, later becoming one of Corellia's most respected investigators. The datapad in his hands contains sensor readings and witness testimonies that paint a picture of tactical brilliance married to cultural sophistication. Together you board a security speeder that carries you through Coronet City's crowded streets toward the investigation site in orbit above the planet's second moon. The cityscape blurs past the vehicle's windows, a mixture of ancient Corellian architecture and newer construction that speaks to a world adapting to its place in the new Republic. Street vendors hawk their wares beneath holographic advertisements for shipping companies and cantina entertainments, the normal rhythms of civilian life continuing despite the shadow of war that still haunts the galaxy. The debris field tells its story in twisted metal and scattered components. What remains of the merchant convoy drifts in lazy orbits around Corellia's smaller moon, each piece of wreckage positioned with mathematical precision that suggests the attacking commander possessed not just tactical genius, but an aesthetic sensibility that borders on artistic obsession. The cargo containers that once held agricultural supplies from Ryloth now float empty, their contents transferred with care that preserved even the most delicate organic samples. Horn activates the speeder's sensor array, revealing electromagnetic signatures that defy explanation. The attacking vessels left behind energy patterns, unlike any in the Republic's extensive databases, resonance frequencies that suggest technologies not just advanced, but fundamentally different from anything produced by human or alien civilizations within the known galaxy. These readings point to construction methods and power systems that operate on principles unknown to the finest engineering minds of Kuat drive yards or Mon Calamari shipyards. More puzzling still are the artistic installations discovered among the wreckage, holographic projectors, their power cells intact despite the battle's fury, display rotating sculptures that capture the essence of Corellian culture with breathtaking accuracy. The flowing curves of wind-carved stone formations from Corellia's northern continents appear alongside three-dimensional recreations of the planet's famous racing circuits, their every turn and elevation change rendered with the precision of someone who has walked those paths and understood their deeper meaning. You examine one particularly intricate display, a holographic representation of Corellian family crests arranged in patterns that mirror the orbital mechanics of the system's 5 inhabited worlds. The knowledge required to create such a piece extends far beyond military intelligence gathering into realms of cultural anthropology and artistic interpretation that no Imperial Academy ever taught. This speaks to a commander who sees conquest not as mere domination, but as a form of intellectual engagement with the civilizations he encounters. Horn's investigation reveals witness testimonies that add disturbing layers to the mystery. Surviving crew members describe the attacking fleet's approach with words more suited to art criticism than military reports. The enemy vessels moved with fluid grace, their formations shifting like schools of Naboo's silverfish in response to defensive maneuvers that had not yet been executed. It was as if their commander could read the intentions of the Republic forces through some form of tactical prescience that bordered on the supernatural. The transfer of cargo occurred with equally inexplicable precision. Rather than the brutal efficiency typical of Imperial operations, the unknown attackers sorted through the convoy supplies with the care of museum curators, selecting specific items that seemed to hold significance beyond their material value. Agricultural samples from worlds across the Outer Rim, cultural artifacts being transported to core world universities, even personal belongings of the crew members were examined and catalogued before being either taken or carefully returned to their original positions. As your investigation deepens, a pattern emerges that chills the soul and quickens the pulse. Each attack targets not just strategic assets, but vessels carrying cultural materials, ships transporting art collections, convoys bearing the creative expressions of the galaxy's diverse civilizations. The enemy commander seems to be assembling a vast library of galactic culture, gathering the artistic DNA of species across known space for purposes that remain shrouded in mystery. The day's work concludes as Corellia's primary star sets behind the planet's industrial skyline, painting the debris field in shades of amber and gold that make even destruction seem beautiful. You accept the mission that crystallizes in your mind like a forming hyperdrive calculation. This threat cannot be understood through conventional intelligence gathering or traditional military analysis. To comprehend the mind behind these attacks, you must follow the trail of artistic breadcrumbs across the galaxy, seeking answers in the cultural expressions that seem to fascinate this unknown enemy. Horn's parting words echo in your thoughts as the Seeker's dream prepares for its jump to hyperspace. The attacks show increasing sophistication, their patterns suggesting a commander who learns and adapts with each engagement. Time works against the Republic's efforts to understand this threat, and somewhere beyond the galaxy's edge, an intelligence of terrifying capability prepares its next move in a game whose rules have yet to be discovered. The hyperspace journey to Merc carries you through regions where few Republic vessels dare to venture, past asteroid fields that still bear the scorch marks of Imperial mining operations, and through stellar phenomena that bend light into impossible geometries. This distant world, shrouded in primordial forests and inhabited by creatures that evolution shaped for purposes the Republic's xenobiologists barely comprehend, holds secrets that may unlock the mystery of your elusive enemy. Merca's surface spreads beneath your descending shuttle like a vast green ocean, its canopy unbroken, except for the occasional glint of metal that marks the hidden installations of smugglers and information brokers. The trees themselves pulse with life forces so intense that even non-force sensitives can feel their presence, a sensation like standing too close to a reactor core that hums with barely contained power. Yet beneath this vitality lurks something else, an emptiness that seems to devour the very concept of the Force itself. The landing platform emerges from the forest canopy with the suddenness of a predator's strike, its construction speaking to engineering principles that favor function over Imperial aesthetics. No banners fly here, no propaganda holoprojectors declare loyalty to any government or cause. This is the domain of Talon Karrde, perhaps the most influential information broker in the galaxy, a man who has built an empire on the principle that knowledge properly applied holds more value than entire star fleets. Karrde himself awaits your arrival, his presence commanding attention without the need for ceremonial displays or military protocol. His weathered features speak of a life lived on the margins of galactic civilization, in those spaces where law and order give way to older codes of honor and pragmatic necessity. The datapad in his hands contains information gathered through networks that span from the corporate sector to the unknown regions, intelligence that governments and crime syndicates would kill to possess. Your first encounter with the ysalamiri comes as a shock that reverberates through your very bones. These salamander-like creatures clinging to the metallic branches of specially cultivated trees project bubbles of nothingness that push back against the Force itself. Within their influence, the galaxy seems somehow smaller, more confined, as if vast possibilities have suddenly collapsed into mundane reality. For those accustomed to the subtle presence of the Force permeating all things, their absence creates a disorientation that borders on nausea. Karrde explains their significance with the casual expertise of someone who has made profitable use of every resource at his disposal. The ysalamiri served the Emperor's interests during his final years, their force-dampening abilities employed in projects that required isolation from the cosmic energies that bind all living things together. Imperial research facilities used them to create zones where force-sensitive individuals became as helpless as ordinary citizens, where the mystical powers of Jedi and Sith held no sway over the outcome of events. The revelation strikes like a bolt of revelation through hyperspace. Your mysterious enemy possesses not just tactical brilliance and cultural sophistication, but access to resources that were once the exclusive province of the Emperor's most secret projects. The ysalamiri represent technology that few beings in the galaxy even know exists, creatures whose very biology can neutralize the advantages that force-sensitive individuals have wielded since the dawn of galactic civilization. Deep within Karrde's compound, surrounded by the soft humming of communication arrays and data processing equipment, you examine encrypted Imperial transmissions that his network has intercepted across multiple star systems. The messages themselves resist conventional decryption methods, their codes based on mathematical principles that seem to draw inspiration from artistic compositions rather than military cipher protocols. References to something called the Empire of the Hand appear throughout these communications, suggesting an organization that operates beyond the authority of any known Imperial remnant. The holographic displays that materialize from Karrde's most secure servers reveal intelligence that chills the blood and quickens the pulse simultaneously. Supply convoys moving through hyperspace routes that do not appear on any Republic star chart. Construction projects on worlds whose names have been purged from Imperial databases. Most disturbing of all, recruitment efforts targeting individuals with specific cultural expertise, scholars and artists whose knowledge spans the creative expressions of dozens of species. One transmission, intercepted near the Cathal Rift, where space itself seems to bend under the weight of ancient cosmic forces, contains references that make your breath catch in your throat. Archaeological expeditions to worlds mentioned only in the oldest Jedi archives, excavations of sites where the first Force sensitives are believed to have developed their connection to the cosmic energy that flows through all living things. The enemy's interest extends beyond mere military conquest into realms of historical research that suggest ambitions spanning millennia rather than mere decades. Karrde's sources within the Imperial remnant paint a picture of chaos and confusion among the surviving Moffs and admirals. Traditional Imperial commanders find themselves outmaneuvered by an opponent who seems to understand their tactical doctrines better than they understand them themselves. More than one high-ranking officer has reported dreams of blue-skinned figures studying holographic displays of their homeworlds, examining not military installations or strategic resources, but museums and cultural centers with the intensity of devoted scholars. The information broker leads you deeper into his facility, past workshops where technicians modify hyperspace communicators, and through chambers lined with rare artifacts collected from across the galaxy. His private office contains treasures that would make core world collectors weep with envy, sculptures from civilizations that vanished before the Old Republic drew its first breath, paintings that capture moments of beauty from species whose names are remembered only in the most ancient texts. Here, surrounded by the creative expressions of 1,000 worlds, Carter reveals intelligence that transforms your understanding of the threat facing the galaxy. The attacks on Republic convoys represent only the visible portion of a vast intelligence-gathering operation, one focused not on military weaknesses or economic vulnerabilities, but on the artistic and cultural foundations that define entire civilizations. Your enemy seeks to understand not just how different species fight, but how they think, how they dream, how they express their deepest hopes and fears through creative endeavors. The implications spread through your consciousness like ripples across a still pond. A commander who studies the cultural expressions of his enemies possesses tactical advantages that transcend conventional military thinking. Art reveals the psychological foundations of civilizations, their core values, and fundamental assumptions about reality itself. A strategist who understands these deeper currents can predict not just how his opponents will react to specific situations, but how their entire societies will respond to different forms of pressure and manipulation. Ancient Jedi Archives, accessible through Carter's extensive network of contacts and information sources, contain references to expeditions beyond the galactic rim undertaken during the Old Republic's Golden Age. These missions, launched to explore the mysteries of the unknown regions, discovered civilizations that had developed along radically different evolutionary paths. Some possessed technologies that operated on principles unknown to core world scientists. Others had achieved forms of social organization that challenged every assumption about how intelligent species interact with their environments. Most intriguing of all are the scattered references to a species whose members possessed natural tactical abilities that bordered on precognition. These beings, described in terms that blend military analysis with artistic appreciation, could read the intentions of their opponents through careful study of their cultural expressions. Their commanders won battles not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through profound understanding of how different species think and react under pressure. The transmission log that Carter saves for last contains a fragment of communication that makes your heart race with recognition and dread. A single phrase repeated across multiple channels in variations that suggest different dialects or linguistic traditions speaks of preparations for something called the heir's return. The context suggests not merely the restoration of Imperial authority, but the emergence of a leader whose capabilities extend far beyond anything the galaxy has previously witnessed. As night falls across Merca's vast forests, you stand on an observation deck that overlooks the canopy's endless expanse, contemplating the magnitude of what you have discovered. Your enemy operates from beyond the known galaxy's borders, commands resources that few beings even know exist, and possesses understanding of galactic civilizations that rivals the greatest scholars of the core worlds. More disturbing still, he seems to be preparing for something that transcends mere military conquest, a campaign that will reshape the galaxy's understanding of power itself. The Usalamiri and the nearby trees continue their silent work, pushing back against the Force and creating zones of mundane reality in a universe suffused with mystical energy. Their presence serves as a constant reminder that your investigation has led you into realms where normal rules and expectations no longer apply, where the very foundations of reality can be manipulated by those who possess sufficient knowledge and will. Tomorrow will bring new revelations as you follow this trail of artistic breadcrumbs toward its source. But tonight you must wrestle with the growing certainty that the galaxy faces a threat unlike any in its recorded history. The intelligence briefing chamber on Coruscant hums with activity as analysts from across the New Republic's security apparatus gather to examine what appears to be the solution to your investigation. Holographic star charts fill the air above the central table, their glowing points marking the locations of Imperial remnant strongholds scattered throughout the Outer Rim territories. The evidence that has accumulated over weeks of painstaking investigation seems to point toward a conclusion that both explains the mysterious attacks and fits within the comfortable boundaries of conventional military thinking. Moff Kane, survivor of the Empire's collapse and architect of the Pentastar alignment, emerges as the most likely candidate behind the sophisticated assault patterns that have plagued Republic shipping lanes. His survival of the chaos that followed Endor speaks to tactical acumen and political cunning that few Imperial commanders possessed. The holographic displays show supply routes that could support the construction of advanced vessels, hidden shipyards in systems that remain loyal to Imperial ideals, and recruitment networks that span dozens of worlds where citizens still remember the order and stability that the Empire once provided. Commander Vos presents her analysis with the thorough professionalism that made her invaluable during her Imperial service, though you detect subtle hesitations in her voice that suggest she harbors doubts about conclusions that seem almost too convenient. The tactical patterns observed in the Republic convoy attacks, she explains, match methodologies taught in advanced Imperial naval academies, sophisticated applications of multi-vector assault doctrines that only graduates of the Empire's most elite military institutions would possess the training to execute. The cultural artifacts discovered at attack sites find explanation through intelligence reports about Kane's known associates, particularly his recruitment of scholars and cultural historians from university worlds that fell under Pentastar influence. These academics, the theory suggests, provide the Moff with detailed knowledge of Republic member species, information that allows his commanders to wage psychological warfare through carefully chosen artistic references that unnerve their victims and demonstrate superior intelligence-gathering capabilities. General Recon, veteran of countless rebellion campaigns, and now serving as the Republic's chief military strategist, studies the evidence with the careful attention of someone who has learned not to trust easy answers. His weathered features reflect memories of battles where overconfidence led to disaster, where assumptions about enemy capabilities proved catastrophically wrong. The datapad in his hands contains casualty reports from merchant convoys and military patrols, stark reminders that real lives hang in the balance of their strategic planning. The Bilbringi system, long suspected of harboring secret Imperial shipyards, becomes the focal point of military planning as Republic intelligence assets report increased activity in its asteroid fields and debris zones. Sensor readings suggest massive construction projects hidden within the system's complex gravitational fields, installations that could produce the advanced vessels responsible for the convoy attacks. The strategic significance of Bilbringi's location, positioned along hyperspace routes that connect the core worlds to the Outer Rim, makes it an ideal base for operations against Republic shipping. Support for the Moff theory comes from multiple intelligence sources throughout the galaxy. Corellian Security Force investigations have traced weapon signatures from the convoy attacks to munitions factories that supplied Imperial forces during the height of the Galactic Civil War. Mon Calamari naval analysts identify technological patterns in the attacking vessels that match modifications developed for elite Imperial squadrons during the Empire's final years. Even the seemingly sophisticated cultural knowledge demonstrated by the enemy finds precedent in Imperial intelligence training programs that emphasized understanding of alien psychology and social structures. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly logical conclusion, disturbing inconsistencies continue to gnaw at your consciousness like persistent doubts that refuse to be silenced. The level of cultural sophistication displayed in the artistic installations exceeds anything in Imperial training databases, suggesting knowledge that goes beyond intelligence briefings and tactical manuals into realms of genuine scholarly expertise. The mathematical precision of the attack formations demonstrates understanding of alien psychology that would require decades of study, not mere intelligence reports compiled by Imperial analysts. Mon Mothma herself attends the final briefing session, her presence bringing gravity to deliberations that will determine the Republic's military response to this growing threat. Her gentle voice carries the weight of experience earned through years of guiding the rebellion through its darkest hours, of making decisions where the fate of entire worlds hung in the balance. The questions she poses reveal a mind that has learned to look beyond obvious explanations toward deeper truths that may lurk beneath surface appearances. As the discussion evolves throughout the long afternoon, you find yourself defending doubts that seem increasingly illogical against evidence that appears overwhelming. The Moff theory explains every aspect of the mysterious attacks through reference to known Imperial capabilities and established patterns of remnant organization. It provides clear targets for military action and strategies for neutralizing threats that fit within existing tactical doctrines. Most importantly, it offers hope that this new enemy can be defeated through conventional means rather than requiring fundamental changes to Republic military thinking. The holographic battle plans that emerge from these discussions show Republic fleet formations converging on suspected Imperial strongholds, coordinated strikes against shipyard facilities in the Bilbringi system, and intelligence operations designed to disrupt recruitment networks that supply Kane's forces with cultural expertise. Admiral Akbar's tactical suggestions draw upon lessons learned during the rebellion's most successful campaigns, adapting proven strategies to address what appears to be a familiar enemy, employing familiar methods with unusual sophistication. Commander Voss remains after the formal briefing concludes, her usual composed demeanor marked by expressions that suggest internal conflict between professional duty and personal intuition. Standing near the great transparestal windows that overlook Coruscant's government district, she voices concerns that echo your own growing unease about conclusions that seem almost too perfect in their logical consistency. The Imperial records from her service, she explains, contain no references to commanders who possessed the depth of cultural knowledge demonstrated by their mysterious enemy. The evening hours bring private reflection as you study intelligence reports in your quarters, high above the city's glittering skyline. The evidence supporting the Moff theory spreads across your desk in neat electronic displays, each data file reinforcing conclusions that satisfy every requirement of logical analysis. Yet something deeper than rational thought insists that crucial elements remain hidden beneath layers of assumption and expectation, that the true nature of this threat extends beyond the comfortable boundaries of conventional Imperial tactics. News arrives through encrypted channels that Bothan Spynet operations have detected increased communications traffic between known Imperial remnant facilities, suggesting coordinated preparations for expanded military operations. The intercepts contain references to supply shipments and personnel transfers that support theories about Kane's growing capabilities. More intriguingly, cultural databases show acquisition patterns that match the artifacts discovered at Republic convoy attack sites, providing seemingly final confirmation that Imperial forces are responsible for the recent escalation in aggressive actions. Sleep proves elusive as your mind wrestles with contradictions that refuse to resolve into coherent understanding. The mathematical elegance of the enemy's tactical formations suggests thinking that transcends normal Imperial doctrine, approaching levels of sophistication that few military minds in galactic history have achieved. The cultural knowledge displayed through artistic installations requires immersion in alien civilizations that goes far beyond intelligence gathering into realms of genuine scholarly appreciation. Dreams, when they finally come, bring visions of blue-skinned figures moving through vast archives filled with the artistic expressions of 1,000 worlds. These phantom commanders study holographic displays with intensity that speaks to purposes beyond mere military conquest, their red eyes reflecting understanding that encompasses not just tactical advantages but deeper truths about the civilizations they observe. Yet each time you approach close enough to discern their features clearly, the images dissolve into fragmented memories of Imperial officers and Moff uniforms, as if your subconscious mind insists on forcing alien possibilities into familiar patterns. Morning brings news that Republic naval forces have begun mobilizing for operations against suspected Imperial strongholds, their movements coordinated according to strategies based on the assumption that Moff Kane and his allies represent the true source of the threat facing galactic commerce. The die appears cast, the investigation concluded, the enemy identified and targeted for elimination. Yet as you prepare for what may be the final phase of this mystery, instincts honed through years of intelligence work continue to whisper that the galaxy's greatest challenges still lie hidden beyond the comfortable boundaries of current understanding. The journey to Wayland takes your investigation beyond the familiar boundaries of civilized space into regions where the Emperor's most terrible secrets still slumber beneath layers of technological horror and mystical darkness. This forgotten world orbits a dying star whose crimson light casts everything in shades of blood and shadow, its surface scarred by excavations that probe deep into planetary geology in search of materials that serve purposes known only to the most twisted Imperial minds. Mount Tantis rises from Wayland's equatorial continent like a metallic tumor, its artificial peak housing installations that were already ancient when the Clone Wars began. The Emperor's engineers carved laboratories and storage facilities deep into the mountain's core, creating a repository for projects too dangerous or morally reprehensible for implementation on more civilized worlds. Even now, years after Palpatine's death, automated systems continue their work in the depths, tending to experiments that may hold keys to understanding your mysterious enemy's true capabilities. Your shuttle's approach to the facility triggers defensive systems that have remained active despite the Empire's collapse, energy shields and weapons platforms that challenge any vessel attempting unauthorized landing. The access codes provided by New Republic intelligence barely suffice to grant passage through these automated guardians, their acceptance grudging and temporary. Landing on the mountain's artificially flattened summit feels like stepping onto the surface of a world where natural law has been bent to serve unnatural purposes. The facility's entrance halls stretch into darkness that seems to devour light itself, their walls lined with containment units and stasis chambers whose contents remain mercifully hidden behind layers of durasteel and transpiasteel. Emergency lighting casts weak illumination that creates more shadows than it dispels, while the air itself carries scents of chemicals and preservatives that speak to experiments involving living tissue and genetic manipulation. Each footstep echoes through corridors designed by minds that viewed morality as an obstacle to scientific advancement. Commander Voss moves through these passages with familiarity that speaks to previous visits during her Imperial service, though her usual composure shows cracks when confronted with projects that challenged even her tolerance for Imperial methods. Her datapad provides access to facility directories and research logs, files that reveal the scope of Palpatine's ambitions and the resources he devoted to projects that extended far beyond mere military conquest into realms of biological manipulation and consciousness transfer. The cloning laboratories occupy the facility's deepest levels, vast chambers filled with growth tanks and genetic sequencing equipment that represent the pinnacle of Imperial biotechnology. Here, in spaces carved from living rock and shielded by layers of force fields and physical barriers, the Emperor's scientists worked to perfect techniques for creating artificial life forms tailored to specific purposes. The tanks themselves remain empty now, their nutrient solutions long since drained, but the equipment stands ready for activation by anyone possessing the proper codes and sufficient understanding of the processes involved. Mara Jade emerges from the shadows like a ghost made manifest, her presence both welcome and unsettling in equal measure. Once the Emperor's most trusted assassin, she now serves her own agenda in the chaotic years following the Empire's collapse, seeking redemption for actions that haunt her dreams and purpose in a galaxy that no longer offers clear distinctions between good and evil. Her knowledge of Imperial secrets and facility operations makes her an invaluable guide through Wayland's labyrinthine passages, though her motivations remain as complex as the moral landscape she now navigates. The deeper you venture into Mount Tantis, the more apparent becomes the facility's true purpose as a repository for knowledge and technology gathered from across the galaxy and beyond. Storage chambers contain artifacts and specimens from species whose names appear in no Republic databases, their origins lost in the mists of prehistory, or discovered in regions so remote that their very existence challenges conventional understanding of galactic geography. Some items pulse with energy signatures that suggest technological principles unknown to even the most advanced civilizations of the core worlds. Jade's explanations of the facility's research programs reveal projects that blur the boundaries between science and sorcery, between technological achievement and mystical manipulation. Consciousness transfer experiments sought to preserve the minds of important individuals beyond the limitations of biological death. Genetic manipulation programs attempted to create force-sensitive beings whose abilities could be controlled and directed according to Imperial needs. Most disturbing of all, archaeological expeditions to worlds mentioned only in the oldest Sith holocrons recovered artifacts that predate the establishment of the Old Republic by millennia. The meditation chambers deep within the mountain's heart offer temporary respite from the facility's oppressive atmosphere, spaces where ancient Jedi techniques of mental discipline can provide clarity amidst the confusion of revelations that challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of power and knowledge. Here, surrounded by force-dampening fields that create zones of mystical silence, you can process the implications of what Wayland's archives reveal about your investigation's true scope and significance. The research logs that Jade accesses through her Imperial clearance codes paint a picture of projects that extend far beyond anything the New Republic suspected about Palpatine's ambitions. References to extragalactic threats appear throughout these files, mentions of dangers that lurk beyond the galaxy's edge and pose challenges that conventional military responses cannot address. The Emperor's preparations for these threats involved not just the construction of superweapons and the training of military forces, but the development of capabilities that transcend normal boundaries between technology and mysticism. Ancient Sith holocrons stored in the facility's most secure vaults contain prophecies and warnings that speak to cosmic cycles of conflict spanning geological ages, patterns of invasion and response that have shaped galactic history since the dawn of intelligent life. These artifacts, their crystalline matrices pulsing with dark side energy, reveal knowledge that the Sith Lords accumulated over millennia of study and experimentation. Their messages speak of threats that dwarf the concerns of individual species or planetary governments, dangers that require unified response from all intelligent beings. The consciousness transfer technology represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Wayland's research programs, equipment capable of preserving individual minds beyond biological death and implanting them in artificial bodies or even appropriately prepared biological hosts. The implications for your investigation become clear as you study the technical specifications and experimental results. An enemy possessing such capabilities could draw upon knowledge and experience accumulated over centuries or even millennia, combining the tactical wisdom of history's greatest military minds with resources and technologies that transcend normal limitations. Jade leads you through laboratories where experiments in force manipulation pushed the boundaries of what even Sith Lords considered possible or advisable. Here, scientists working under Imperial authority attempted to artificially enhance force sensitivity in non-gifted individuals, to create biological mechanisms that could amplify or focus mystical energies, and to develop technologies that could interact directly with the cosmic forces that bind all living things together. The results of these experiments remain locked away in containment units whose warning labels speak to dangers that persist long after their creators have perished. The archives hidden in Wayland's deepest chambers contain intelligence gathered from expeditions beyond the galaxy's rim, reports from explorers who ventured into the unknown regions during the Empire's golden age of expansion. These documents describe civilizations that developed along evolutionary paths radically different from anything found in familiar space species, whose technologies operate on principles that challenge basic assumptions about physics and biology. Most intriguingly, several reports mention contact with beings whose natural abilities include tactical prescience that borders on prophecy. As your exploration of the facility nears its conclusion, patterns begin to emerge that connect Wayland's research programs to the mysterious attacks plaguing Republic shipping. The combination of consciousness transfer technology, extragalactic intelligence, and force manipulation techniques creates possibilities that transcend normal military thinking. An enemy possessing access to such resources could indeed demonstrate the cultural sophistication and tactical brilliance that have characterized the convoy attacks. The mountain's artificial sunset, filtered through atmospheric processes that maintain the facility's environmental systems, casts the research chambers in shades of amber and gold that make even these spaces of scientific horror seem briefly beautiful. Standing in an observation deck that overlooks laboratories where the boundaries between life and death were routinely violated, you contemplate the magnitude of what you have discovered and the implications for your continuing investigation. Wayland's secrets suggest that your enemy operates from resources and knowledge bases that extend far beyond anything the New Republic anticipated when this investigation began. The facility's archives point toward threats and capabilities that render conventional military responses inadequate, challenges that will require fundamental changes in how the galaxy approaches questions of defense and survival. Tomorrow will bring new revelations as you follow this trail toward its ultimate source, but tonight you must wrestle with the growing certainty that the true scope of the danger facing galactic civilization extends far beyond the comfortable boundaries of political and military conflict. The holographic archives, deep within Wayland's secure databases, flicker to life with images that shatter every assumption your investigation has built upon, like transperistilles struck by turbolaser fire. Blue-skinned features materialize in the projection field, angular and aristocratic, belonging to a being whose red eyes seem to burn with intelligence that transcends normal biological limitations. This is no human Moff or familiar Imperial commander, but something altogether different, a figure whose very existence challenges the Republic's understanding of the threats lurking beyond civilized space. Grand Admiral Thrawn. The records identify him, though the name carries weight that extends far beyond simple military rank into realms of legend and whispered fear. The files that cascade across your display screens reveal a tactical genius whose capabilities redefined Imperial doctrine during his brief but devastating service to the Emperor's cause. Unlike the brutish commanders who typically rose through Imperial ranks through political maneuvering and ruthless ambition, this being achieved prominence through pure intellectual superiority that even Palpatine himself acknowledged and feared. The biographical data that emerges from these classified archives paints a picture of origins that lie not within the familiar boundaries of the galaxy, but in the mysterious regions beyond its edge, among species whose names appear in no Republic databases and whose civilizations developed according to principles unknown to core world anthropologists. Thrawn's homeworld of Sipsala orbits a star whose light has never touched any Republic vessel, part of a stellar cluster that exists in the spaces between the galaxy's spiral arms, where conventional hyperspace routes become unreliable and dangerous. Commander Voss studies these revelations with expressions that shift between professional interest and growing unease, her experience with Imperial hierarchies providing context for understanding what Thrawn's position within the Emperor's inner circle truly signified. Few non-humans ever achieved significant rank within the xenophobic Imperial military structure, and none had ever been granted the authority and resources that these files show were placed at Thrawn's disposal during his service to the Empire's expansion into unknown regions' territories. The Chiss ascendancy, as the files reveal Thrawn's native civilization to be called, represents a form of social organization that challenges every assumption about how intelligent species interact with their environments and each other. Rather than the chaotic individualism that characterizes most galactic civilizations or the rigid authoritarianism that defined the Empire, the Chiss developed a system based on collective intellectual achievement and long-term strategic thinking that spans not decades but centuries of careful planning and preparation. Mara Jade's knowledge of Thrawn comes from direct experience during her service as the Emperor's hand, memories that she shares with reluctance and obvious internal conflict. Her descriptions of encounters with the Grand Admiral reveal a being whose capabilities extended far beyond tactical brilliance into realms of cultural analysis and psychological understanding that bordered on the supernatural. Thrawn could study the artistic expressions of any species, and from those creative works deduce not only their military capabilities, but their deepest fears, greatest strengths, and most fundamental weaknesses. The tactical records from Thrawn's Imperial service read like poetry written in the language of destruction and victory, each engagement demonstrating principles of warfare that transcend conventional military thinking. At the Battle of Atollon, his forces destroyed a rebel fleet twice their size through maneuvers that anticipated every possible enemy response with mathematical precision. The survivors spoke not of superior firepower or advanced technology, but of fighting an opponent who seemed to know their tactical doctrines better than they knew them themselves. The revelation that transforms your understanding completely emerges from intelligence reports filed during the chaotic months following the Battle of Endor. While Republic forces celebrated the Emperor's death and the apparent collapse of Imperial authority, reconnaissance missions to the unknown regions detected massive fleet movements and construction projects that suggested not Imperial disintegration, but reorganization on a scale that dwarfed anything the Empire had previously attempted. Thrawn's survival of the Empire's collapse becomes not just a military fact, but a strategic nightmare of unprecedented proportions. Unlike the squabbling Moffs and ambitious admirals who carved the Imperial remnants into competing fiefdoms, this Grand Admiral possessed both the intellectual capabilities and the cultural resources necessary to forge these scattered forces into something far more dangerous than the Empire had ever been under Palpatine's rule. The unknown regions, according to these archived reports, contain not just scattered Imperial holdouts, but entire civilizations that allied themselves with Thrawn's vision of galactic order. Species whose names translate poorly into basic languages, whose technologies operate according to principles that core world scientists barely comprehend, and whose military traditions span millennia of conflict against threats that the Republic has never imagined. These allies provide Thrawn with resources and capabilities that extend far beyond anything available to conventional Imperial commanders. The artistic installations discovered at Republic convoy attack sites find their explanation in Thrawn's unique methodology for understanding and defeating his enemies. Each holographic sculpture and cultural reference represents not mere psychological warfare, but genuine scholarly analysis, the Grand Admiral's attempt to comprehend the civilizations he encounters through their most profound creative expressions. His tactical victories emerge from this deep cultural understanding, allowing him to predict enemy responses not through intelligence reports but through intimate knowledge of how different species think and react under pressure. The implications spread through your consciousness, like shock waves from a hypermatter explosion, each realization more disturbing than the last. The Republic faces not just another Imperial warlord, but a strategic genius whose capabilities transcend anything in galactic military history. Thrawn's access to unknown regions' resources, combined with his intellectual abilities and cultural sophistication, creates a threat that conventional military responses cannot address through superior numbers or advanced technology alone. Jade's memories provide disturbing insights into Thrawn's ultimate loyalties and motivations, suggesting complexities that extend beyond simple ambition for Imperial restoration. During her service as the Emperor's Hand, she witnessed conversations between Palpatine and his Grand Admiral that hinted at preparations for threats that originated not from within the galaxy, but from beyond its boundaries. Thrawn's apparent service to Imperial goals masked deeper purposes that even the Emperor himself may not have fully understood. The historical records reveal patterns of Chiss expansion and consolidation in the unknown regions that predate the Empire by centuries, suggesting that Thrawn's people possessed long-term strategic plans that utilized Imperial resources for purposes that transcended human political ambitions. The Grand Admiral's appointment to high Imperial rank becomes not evidence of the Emperor's wisdom, but proof of his manipulation by forces whose goals remained hidden beneath layers of apparent cooperation and shared interest. The facility's analysis computers process tactical data from the convoy attacks through comparison programs that match patterns against historical battle records, their conclusions emerging as probability matrices that make your blood run cold. The attacking fleets demonstrate coordination and strategic thinking that match Thrawn's documented methodologies with statistical certainty that eliminates any possibility of coincidence or imitation. The Republic faces not just the ghost of Imperial authority but its most dangerous practitioner returned with resources that dwarf anything he commanded during his previous service. The deeper implications of this revelation extend beyond immediate military concerns into questions about the nature of galactic civilization itself. If beings like Thrawn exist in the unknown regions, possessing capabilities that transcend human understanding and commanding resources that span multiple species and star systems, then the Republic's assumptions about its place in the cosmic order require fundamental revision. The galaxy may contain not just competing governments and military forces, but entire civilizations whose purposes and capabilities remain completely hidden from core world awareness. As night settles over Wayland's artificial landscape, you stand in an observation chamber overlooking the facility's research levels, contemplating the magnitude of the discovery that has emerged from your investigation. The enemy you seek to understand possesses not just tactical genius, but cultural resources and intellectual capabilities that render previous assumptions about Imperial threats obsolete. Thrawn represents not merely a military challenge, but a fundamental test of the Republic's ability to adapt and survive when confronted with forms of intelligence and organization that exist beyond its conceptual boundaries. The stars visible through the chamber's transparistile barriers seem different now, no longer familiar points of light marking trade routes and colony worlds, but potential sources of threats whose nature and scope remain completely unknown. Somewhere among those distant suns, Grand Admiral Thrawn prepares for campaigns that will test not just military capabilities, but the Republic's fundamental understanding of what it means to exist as part of a galaxy that contains mysteries and dangers beyond current imagination. The ancient Sith holocrons that rest in Wayland's deepest vaults pulse with malevolent energy as their crystalline matrices respond to your presence, their surfaces flickering with patterns of light that seem to move according to purposes beyond mechanical programming. These artifacts predate the establishment of the Old Republic by millennia, their creation spanning back to an era when the galaxy itself was younger and the boundaries between known and unknown space remained fluid and permeable to forces that current civilizations have forgotten or chosen to ignore. Activating the first holocron requires techniques that Mara Jade learned during her service to the Emperor, methods of force manipulation that tap into the dark side energies that permeate these ancient devices. The hologram that materializes bears the features of a Sith Lord whose name has been lost to history, his expression conveying knowledge accumulated through centuries of study and experimentation with powers that transcend normal understanding of reality itself. The message that emerges from this digital ghost speaks of cyclic invasions that have shaped galactic history since the dawn of intelligent life. Patterns of conquest and resistance that repeat across geological ages with regularity that suggests cosmic forces beyond the influence of individual species or civilizations. These invasions, the holocron explains, originate from beyond the galaxy's edge in regions where space itself operates according to different physical laws and where life evolved along paths that challenge every assumption about biological development. Commander Voss translates the archaic Sith language with expertise that reflects her intelligence training, though her voice carries undertones of growing unease as the holocron's revelations unfold. The invasions described in these ancient records dwarf the conflicts that define current galactic politics, involving forces whose capabilities render conventional military responses inadequate and whose motivations remain alien to species that evolved within the galaxy's protective boundaries. The second holocron reveals knowledge that chills the soul and quickens the pulse simultaneously, its projections showing star charts that extend far beyond the galaxy's visible boundaries into regions where conventional hyperspace travel becomes impossible and navigation requires capabilities that few species possess. Here, in the vast emptiness between galaxies, ancient civilizations developed technologies and social structures that operate according to principles unknown to core world scientists and philosophers. These extragalactic civilizations, the holocron explains, view the galaxy not as a collection of independent worlds and species, but as a single organism whose resources and populations represent potential sources of biological material and technological advancement. Their periodic invasions serve purposes that transcend simple conquest, involving the harvesting of genetic diversity and the acquisition of knowledge that serves projects spanning millions of years of development and expansion. The Far Outsiders, as the ancient Sith termed these extragalactic invaders, possess capabilities that render them nearly immune to force-based attacks and conventional weapon systems. Their technologies operate through biological processes that blur the boundaries between living organisms and mechanical devices, creating vessels and weapons that adapt and evolve in response to defensive measures. Most disturbing of all, their understanding of galactic civilizations extends deep into historical patterns and cultural developments that suggest surveillance and preparation spanning multiple invasion cycles. Mara Jade's knowledge of Imperial history provides context for understanding how these ancient threats relate to more recent galactic events, connections that reveal the true scope of Palpatine's ambitions and the hidden purposes behind his most secret projects. The Emperor's construction of massive battle stations and his development of superweapon technologies were not merely responses to rebel threats, but preparations for conflicts that would determine the galaxy's survival against enemies whose capabilities transcended anything within known space. The third holocron contains prophecies that speak to the role of individual beings in these cosmic cycles, predictions about tactical geniuses who would emerge from the galaxy's edge to serve as bridges between familiar civilizations and the ancient knowledge necessary for survival against extragalactic invasion. These chosen leaders would possess not just military capabilities, but cultural understanding that spans multiple species and the intellectual flexibility necessary to forge alliances between traditional enemies. The connections begin forming in your mind like hyperdrive calculations resolving into jump coordinates, each revelation building upon previous discoveries to create a picture of staggering complexity and terrifying implications. Thrawn's service to the Empire was never about loyalty to human supremacist ideology or personal ambition for political power, but represented his species' attempt to prepare the galaxy for threats that dwarf all previous conflicts in scope and significance. The Chiss ascendancy, according to these ancient records, serves as one of several guardian civilizations that evolved in the unknown regions specifically to monitor extragalactic activities and prepare defenses against periodic invasions. Their development of tactical genius as a hereditary trait, their emphasis on long-term strategic thinking, and their cultivation of cultural understanding across multiple species all represent evolutionary adaptations to the requirements of defending against enemies whose capabilities transcend normal military responses. The Emperor's recruitment of Thrawn becomes not evidence of Imperial pragmatism, but proof of Palpatine's awareness of these ancient threats, and his recognition that conventional human leadership would prove inadequate for the challenges ahead. The Sith holocrons reveal that previous galactic civilizations survived far outsider invasions only through unity between species that normally viewed each other as competitors or enemies, alliances that required leaders capable of transcending racial and cultural boundaries. The implications for current galactic politics spread through your consciousness like ripples across still water, each realization more disturbing than the last. The conflicts between Empire and Republic, the civil wars and political divisions that have consumed galactic attention for decades, represent not meaningful political differences but dangerous distractions from the real threats that approach from beyond the galaxy's protective boundaries. Thrawn's apparent attacks on Republic shipping find their explanation in this larger context as preparation rather than aggression, testing of defensive capabilities and assessment of tactical readiness that serves purposes beyond simple military conquest. The Grand Admiral seeks not to destroy the new Republic, but to forge it into an instrument capable of surviving challenges that will require every resource and capability that galactic civilization can muster. The artistic installations discovered at convoy attack sites represent not psychological warfare, but genuine attempts at cultural analysis. Thrawn's efforts to understand the psychological foundations that will determine how different species respond to the stress and horror of extragalactic invasion. His tactical victories serve as educational experiences, teaching Republic forces lessons that will prove essential when facing enemies whose capabilities transcend anything within current galactic experience. The consciousness transfer technology discovered in Wayland's laboratories finds its purpose in this context as a method for preserving and accumulating the tactical knowledge necessary for defending against threats that span geological timescales. Individual biological lifespans prove inadequate for developing the expertise necessary to counter enemies whose own development spans millions of years of evolution and technological advancement. Ancient Force techniques described in the Sith holocrons reveal methods for enhancing tactical perception and strategic thinking beyond normal biological limitations, capabilities that explain Thrawn's apparent prescience and his ability to anticipate enemy responses with supernatural accuracy. These techniques, developed over millennia of conflict against extragalactic invaders, represent the accumulated wisdom of civilizations that faced and survived challenges that destroyed entire star systems. The deeper you delve into these ancient records, the more apparent becomes the scope of preparation that survival against far outsider invasion requires. Every aspect of galactic civilization, from military organization to technological development to cultural evolution, must be aligned toward purposes that transcend normal political and economic concerns. Species that cannot adapt to these requirements face extinction, while those that embrace necessary changes gain the capability to preserve their civilizations across cosmic cycles of destruction and renewal. The final holocron contains warnings about the timing of the next invasion cycle, astronomical calculations that place the far outsider's return within decades rather than centuries of current galactic time. The preparations that previous civilizations required centuries to complete must now be accomplished within the limited time available before enemies whose capabilities dwarf current understanding arrive to test every assumption about the nature of survival and civilization itself. As you absorb the magnitude of these revelations, the facility around you seems to fade into insignificance compared to the cosmic scope of the challenges that await galactic civilization. Wayland's research programs, the Emperor's superweapons, Thrawn's tactical preparations, all represent fragments of a response to threats that require fundamental changes in how intelligent species view their relationships with each other and their place within the larger cosmic order. The stars visible through the facility's observation windows no longer represent familiar territory marked by trade routes and colonial boundaries, but frontier regions where the galaxy's defenders must establish monitoring stations and defensive preparations against enemies whose approach will transform every assumption about the nature of war, survival, and the meaning of civilization itself. Somewhere beyond those distant lights, forces gather that will test not just military capabilities but the galaxy's fundamental capacity for unity, adaptation, and survival against challenges that transcend every previous historical experience. The hyperspace journey to Scylla carries you through regions where conventional navigation becomes unreliable and dangerous, past gravitational anomalies that bend light into impossible configurations, and through stellar phenomena that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. These are the spaces between the spiral arms, the vast emptiness where ancient civilizations developed in isolation from the political chaos and cultural conflicts that define life in more familiar regions of space. Scylla's approach through your shuttle's viewports reveals a world carved from ice and crystal, its surface gleaming with aurora displays that dance across polar skies in patterns too complex for coincidence. The planet's cities rise from frozen plains like sculptures hewn from living gemstone, their architecture following mathematical principles that create harmony between artificial construction and natural geological formations. This is beauty born from necessity, civilization shaped by environmental challenges that demanded perfection in both engineering and aesthetic design. The Chiss Ascendancy's capital spreads across Caesar's northern continent, in terraced levels that descend from mountain peaks to frozen seas, each district specialized for functions that serve the collective needs of a society organized around intellectual achievement rather than individual accumulation of wealth or power. The landing platforms that receive your diplomatic shuttle incorporate technologies that seem to operate through principles unknown to Republic engineers, energy fields that guide incoming vessels with precision that eliminates the need for manual piloting or automated guidance systems. Your diplomatic escort consists of Chiss navigators whose red eyes reflect intelligence that spans generations of accumulated tactical knowledge. Beings whose childhood training included the memorization of star charts that extend far beyond the galaxy's visible boundaries. Their formal courtesy masks assessments that evaluate not just your immediate purposes, but the long-term implications of your investigation for galactic security and ascendancy strategic planning. The archives that house the Chiss Ascendancy's historical records occupy crystalline chambers carved deep into Scylla's planetary crust, their walls lined with data storage systems that have operated continuously for millennia without requiring maintenance or technological upgrades. The knowledge preserved in these facilities spans not decades or centuries but geological ages, representing the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that measures time in cosmic cycles rather than individual lifespans. Syndic Mithrices Aphes, speaking for the 8th ruling family that produced Grand Admiral Thrawn, receives you in chambers where holographic star charts display not current galactic geography, but historical patterns of expansion and invasion that reveal the true scope of threats that approach from beyond familiar space. Her explanations of Chiss society reveal a culture organized around the principle that individual achievement serves collective survival, that personal ambitions must align with species-wide preparation for challenges that transcend normal political and military concerns. The revelation that emerges from these diplomatic exchanges transforms your understanding of Thrawn's relationship to his native civilization and his ultimate loyalties to galactic security. Mithranurodo, as the archives identify him by his full Chiss name, was selected from childhood for training in cultural analysis and tactical thinking that would prepare him for service beyond ascendancy boundaries. His appointment to Imperial rank represented not defection from Chiss society, but the fulfillment of a mission that required infiltration of galactic political structures. The Chiss children, who serve as navigators through the unknown regions, possess force sensitivities that manifest differently from abilities documented in Jedi or Sith traditions. Their gifts focused specifically on perception of hyperspace anomalies and prediction of stellar phenomena, rather than telekinetic manipulation or precognitive combat abilities. These talents prove essential for travel through regions where conventional astrogation becomes impossible and where survival depends on intuitive understanding of cosmic forces that operate beyond normal physical laws. The historical records reveal patterns of Chiss expansion and consolidation that predate human civilization by tens of thousands of years, their development shaped by proximity to extragalactic phenomena and early contact with species whose origins lie beyond the galaxy's protective boundaries. The Ascendancy's military traditions evolved specifically to counter threats that conventional galactic civilizations have never encountered, tactics and strategies designed for enemies whose capabilities transcend normal understanding of warfare and conquest. Archive chambers dedicated to threat assessment contain intelligence gathered through millennia of monitoring extragalactic activities, reports from reconnaissance missions that ventured into the void between galaxies and returned with knowledge of civilizations whose technologies operate through biological processes that blur the boundaries between living organisms and mechanical devices. These far outsider species view the galaxy not as a collection of independent worlds, but as a single ecosystem whose resources serve purposes that span millions of years of development and expansion. The deeper you venture into Casilla's archive systems, the more apparent becomes the scope of preparation that survival against extragalactic invasion requires. Every aspect of Chiss civilization, from child-rearing practices to military organization to technological development, has been shaped by the understanding that individual species survival depends on successful coordination with other galactic civilizations in defense against threats that dwarf all previous historical conflicts. Syndic Mithras's Aphes shares knowledge that reveals the true significance of Thrawn's tactical methods and his emphasis on cultural analysis as the foundation of strategic planning. The far outsiders possess understanding of galactic civilizations that extends deep into historical patterns and psychological foundations, knowledge that allows them to predict defensive responses and exploit weaknesses that transcend mere military capabilities. Effective resistance requires commanders who can match this cultural sophistication while forging unity between species that normally view each other as competitors or enemies. The meditation chambers within the archive complex offer opportunities for contemplation amidst surroundings that demonstrate the Chiss approach to balancing individual development with collective purpose. Here, surrounded by ice crystal formations that grow according to mathematical principles, you can process the implications of revelations that challenge every assumption about the nature of galactic politics and the meaning of civilization itself. The force manifestations that occur within these chambers differ markedly from experiences documented in Jedi or Sith traditions. Their effects focused on enhanced pattern recognition and tactical perception rather than physical manipulation or emotional influence. Chiss Force users develop abilities that serve specific purposes related to navigation through unknown regions and prediction of threats that approach from beyond conventional sensor range, talents that prove essential for survival in regions where normal rules of space and time become unreliable. Ancient prophecies preserved in the deepest archive levels speak of chosen leaders who will emerge during the galaxy's greatest crisis, tactical geniuses whose abilities transcend normal species limitations and whose understanding spans the cultural foundations of multiple civilizations. These individuals will serve as bridges between familiar political structures and the ancient knowledge necessary for survival against enemies whose capabilities challenge every assumption about the nature of war and conquest. The implications of these prophecies for Thrawn's current activities become clear as you study tactical analyses that demonstrate his success in forging cooperation between traditional enemies and his ability to inspire loyalty across species boundaries that normally prove insurmountable. The Grand Admiral's apparent attacks on Republic forces represent not aggression, but education, testing of defensive capabilities, and assessment of readiness for challenges that will require every resource that galactic civilization can muster. The astronomical calculations preserved in Sila's archives reveal timing estimates for the next far outsider invasion that place their arrival within decades of current galactic time, predictions based on cosmic cycles that have operated with mathematical precision across geological ages. The preparations that previous civilizations required centuries to complete must now be accomplished within the limited time available before enemies whose capabilities dwarf current understanding arrive to test every assumption about survival and cooperation. As your visit to the Chiss Ascendancy archives nears its conclusion, you stand in observation chambers that overlook Sila's aurora displays, contemplating the magnitude of what these revelations mean for galactic civilization and your own role in events that will determine the fate of every intelligent species within known space. The knowledge you have gained transforms your understanding of current political conflicts and military preparations, revealing their true significance as fragments of response to challenges that transcend all previous historical experience. The return journey to Republic space carries with it the weight of secrets that cannot be shared through normal diplomatic channels and responsibilities that extend far beyond the scope of conventional intelligence operations. Somewhere among the stars that wheel overhead, Grand Admiral Thrawn continues preparations that will test not just military capabilities, but the galaxy's fundamental capacity for unity and adaptation in the face of threats that challenge the very meaning of civilization itself. The encrypted vaults beneath the Imperial Palace on Coruscant have remained sealed since the Emperor's death, their security systems responding only to clearance codes that died with Palpatine himself and the handful of advisors who shared his deepest secrets. Breaking these seals requires techniques that Commander Voss learned during her years in Imperial intelligence, methods of bypassing quantum encryption that involve both technological expertise and understanding of the paranoid mindset that shaped the Empire's most sensitive security protocols. The descent into these forgotten levels carries you through passages that few living beings have ever traversed. Corridors lined with blast doors and energy barriers that represent the pinnacle of Imperial defensive technology. The air itself feels different here, heavy with the residual presence of dark side energies that accumulated during decades of Palpatine's meditations and consultations with Sith holocrons that contained the wisdom of ancient lords whose names have been erased from galactic history. The primary archive chamber stretches beyond the reach of standard illumination systems, its walls rising into darkness that seems to absorb light rather than merely reflect it. Here, in storage units that could survive the destruction of the planet itself, Palpatine preserved the contingency plans and strategic analyses that reveal the true scope of his ambitions and the cosmic fears that drove his transformation from ambitious politician to galactic dictator. The holographic displays that materialize from these archives paint a picture of Imperial planning that extends far beyond the familiar boundaries of political conquest and military expansion into realms of preparation for threats that transcend anything documented in Republic intelligence. Databases, Palpatine's construction of the Death Star weapons system, his development of massive fleet formations, and his cultivation of force-sensitive agents all served purposes that connect to intelligence gathered from sources beyond the galaxy's edge. Mara Jade's memories of her final conversations with the Emperor provide context for understanding these revelations. Her recollections of discussions that touched upon threats and preparations that seemed abstract and theoretical at the time, but now reveal themselves as responses to concrete dangers that approach from regions where conventional physics becomes unreliable and where life evolved according to principles unknown to galactic civilizations. The contingency protocols that emerge from these archives reveal the Emperor's awareness that his death would not end the preparations necessary for galactic survival against extragalactic invasion, but would merely transfer responsibility to individuals and organizations capable of continuing his work without the political complications that his presence created. These successors would need tactical abilities that transcended normal human limitations and cultural understanding that spanned multiple species and civilizations. Thrawn's recruitment to Imperial service finds its explanation in documents that predate his first contact with Imperial forces by decades. Intelligence reports that identify the Chiss ascendancy as a potential source of the tactical genius and cultural sophistication necessary for coordinating galactic defenses against far outsider invasion. Palpatine's agents in the unknown region spent years cultivating relationships with Chiss leaders and identifying individuals whose capabilities matched the requirements of this cosmic responsibility. The Death Star project's true purpose emerges from technical specifications and strategic analyses that reveal capabilities extending far beyond the destruction of individual planets or rebellious populations. The battle station's superlaser technology was designed to generate energy outputs sufficient to damage far outsider vessels whose construction materials and defensive systems render them nearly immune to conventional weapons. The massive infrastructure required to build and operate such weapons represents preparation for conflicts that would span multiple star systems and require resources that dwarf anything committed to previous galactic wars. The Emperor's Clone Wars manipulations take on new significance when viewed through the lens of these revelations. His orchestration of galactic conflict, serving not just political ambitions, but military preparation for challenges that would require unified command structures and tactical doctrines capable of coordinating forces across species boundaries. The experience gained through years of civil war provided training for military leaders and testing of strategic concepts that would prove essential when facing enemies whose capabilities transcend normal understanding of warfare and conquest. The most disturbing documents in these archives contain Force visions that Palpatine experienced throughout his rise to power, prophetic dreams that revealed glimpses of invasion fleets whose vessels operate through biological processes and whose crews possess psychological characteristics that render them immune to conventional diplomatic approaches. These visions drove his construction of surveillance networks that extend into the unknown regions and his development of communication systems that could maintain contact across galactic distances during periods of intensive military conflict. The Imperial Military Academy's curricula receive explanation through training programs that emphasized preparation for unconventional threats and enemies whose tactical approaches would challenge every assumption about the nature of warfare. Officers who graduated from these institutions possessed theoretical knowledge of combat scenarios that seemed impossible or absurd at the time, but now reveal themselves as preparation for conflicts against opponents whose capabilities transcend anything within galactic experience. The Emperor's relationship with the dark side of the Force finds new meaning in these archives. His cultivation of Sith powers, serving not personal ambition for mystical dominance, but practical preparation for conflicts against enemies whose own abilities operate through principles that blur the boundaries between technology and biological manipulation. The ancient Sith techniques that Palpatine mastered include methods for enhancing tactical perception and strategic thinking beyond normal limitations, capabilities that would prove essential for commanders facing far outsider invasion. The network of hidden bases and supply depots that the Empire established throughout the unknown regions represents infrastructure for military operations that extend far beyond the scope of conventional galactic conflicts. Installations designed to support fleet operations in regions where normal logistics become impossible, and where survival depends on preparation and resource stockpiling that spans decades or centuries of advanced planning. The consciousness preservation technology discovered on Wayland finds its ultimate purpose in protocols that would allow the Emperor's strategic knowledge and tactical experience to survive his biological death, ensuring continuity of command and preservation of essential information across the transition periods that mark changes in galactic leadership. These systems were designed to support individuals capable of carrying forward preparations that span timescales beyond normal biological limitations. The revelation that transforms your understanding completely emerges from the deepest archives. Documents that reveal Palpatine's awareness that his own death was not just possible but necessary for the completion of galactic preparations against far outsider invasion. His political methods and authoritarian governance created resistance that would prove counterproductive during the unity-building phase that survival against extragalactic threats would require. His elimination would allow more suitable leaders to emerge who could forge cooperation between species and organizations that his presence made impossible. Thrawn's apparent loyalty to Imperial ideals receives explanation through communications that reveal his true allegiance to galactic survival rather than political ideology. His service to the Empire, representing willingness to work within existing power structures while preparing for responsibilities that transcend normal governmental authority. The Grand Admiral's tactical genius and cultural sophistication position him as the natural successor to carry forward preparations that the Emperor's death left incomplete. The timeline projections contained in these archives match astronomical calculations preserved in Chiss ascendancy records, confirming that far outsider invasion will occur within decades rather than centuries of current galactic time. The preparations that previous civilizations required millennia to complete must now be accomplished through accelerated programs that demand cooperation between traditional enemies and sacrifice of individual ambitions for collective survival. The implications spread through your consciousness like shockwaves from colliding hyperspace dimensions, each revelation building upon previous discoveries to create understanding of cosmic scope and terrifying responsibility. The political conflicts that have consumed galactic attention represent not meaningful ideological differences, but dangerous distractions from preparation for challenges that will determine whether intelligent life survives in this region of the universe. As you absorb the magnitude of these revelations, the chamber around you seems to fade into insignificance compared to the cosmic chess game that has been unfolding across galactic history for longer than most civilizations have existed. The Emperor's manipulations, Thrawn's preparations, the conflicts between Empire and Republic all represent moves in a strategy that spans geological time and requires thinking that transcends normal political and military considerations. The archive systems that surround you contain the accumulated wisdom and strategic planning of one of history's most brilliant and ruthless minds. Knowledge that reveals the true scope of the challenges that await galactic civilization and the preparations that survival will require. Somewhere beyond the galaxy's edge, enemies gather whose capabilities will test not just military strength, but the fundamental capacity for unity and adaptation that defines intelligent life itself. The emergency session convenes in chambers deep beneath Coruscant's government complex, spaces shielded by energy fields and quantum barriers that prevent any form of surveillance or electronic eavesdropping. Representatives from across the galaxy gather in response to intelligence that challenges every assumption about political alliances and military priorities, their faces reflecting the strain of processing revelations that demand fundamental changes in how civilized species approach questions of survival and cooperation. Mon Mothma presides over these deliberations with the quiet authority that guided the rebellion through its darkest hours, though her usual composed demeanor shows cracks when confronted with evidence of threats that dwarf anything the galaxy has previously faced. The data files spread across the conference table contain information that transforms the meaning of current political conflicts and reveals the true scope of challenges that approach from beyond familiar space. Admiral Akbar studies tactical projections that demonstrate the inadequacy of conventional military responses to far outsider capabilities, his strategic mind grappling with defensive requirements that exceed anything in Republic naval doctrine. The fleet formations that defeated the Empire at Endor would prove less effective than children's toys against enemies whose vessels operate through biological processes and whose tactics incorporate understanding of galactic civilizations accumulated across multiple invasion cycles. The Bothan intelligence networks that span known space have detected increased activity in regions previously thought uninhabited, sensor readings that suggest massive construction projects and fleet movements in systems whose locations do not appear on any Republic star chart. These activities coordinate with patterns observed in the unknown regions, indicating preparations for operations that will require resources and capabilities far exceeding anything available to conventional galactic governance. Luke Skywalker's presence brings perspectives shaped by Force sensitivity and Jedi training. His understanding of cosmic energies providing insights into the mystical aspects of far outsider capabilities and the spiritual preparation that survival against such enemies will require. His experiences with ancient Sith holocrons and Jedi archives reveal techniques for enhancing tactical perception and fostering unity between species whose natural inclinations favor competition over cooperation. The revelation that Grand Admiral Thrawn serves not Imperial ambitions, but galactic survival creates political complications that threaten to paralyze decision-making at the moment when rapid response becomes most crucial. Traditional enemies must transform into allies while maintaining vigilance against deception and manipulation by individuals whose ultimate loyalties remain uncertain despite evidence of their commitment to collective survival. Leia Organa's diplomatic expertise proves essential for navigating negotiations between Republic leadership and Imperial remnant commanders whose cooperation becomes necessary for effective defense against extragalactic invasion. Her ability to separate personal grievances from strategic necessities allows progress toward agreements that would seem impossible under normal political circumstances, alliances forged through recognition of threats that transcend all previous conflicts. The communication networks that connect scattered Imperial forces reveal coordination and planning that extends far beyond anything attributed to conventional remnant organizations, their activities directed by intelligence that spans multiple species and incorporates understanding of galactic geography that exceeds Republic databases. These forces prepare not for renewed civil war, but for conflicts against enemies whose capabilities transcend anything within historical experience. Chiss Ascendancy representatives arrive through diplomatic channels that operate beyond normal Republic authority, their presence bringing tactical knowledge and cultural expertise that proves essential for understanding far outsider psychology and strategic thinking. Their willingness to share information that their civilization has guarded for millennia demonstrates recognition that galactic survival requires cooperation between species that have maintained isolation since before the establishment of the Old Republic. The integration of Ysalamiri technology into defensive planning creates possibilities for neutralizing far outsider advantages while providing Republic forces with capabilities that conventional military doctrine never anticipated. These force-dampening creatures offer protection against mystical manipulation while creating tactical opportunities that skilled commanders can exploit during engagements with enemies whose own abilities operate through principles unknown to galactic civilizations. The manufacturing capabilities necessary for producing hybrid technologies that incorporate Republic, Imperial, and Chiss innovations require industrial coordination that spans multiple star systems and transcends traditional economic boundaries. Shipyards that once competed for military contracts must now cooperate in projects that demand sharing of proprietary technologies and coordination of production schedules according to strategic priorities rather than profit margins. Training programs for military personnel must be redesigned to prepare soldiers and officers for conflicts against enemies whose psychological characteristics and tactical approaches differ fundamentally from anything encountered during previous galactic wars. Traditional military academies adapt their curricula to include cultural analysis techniques and tactical methodologies that emphasize understanding of alien psychology over conventional strategic doctrine. The logistics of coordinating defensive preparations across galactic distances create challenges that exceed anything attempted during previous military operations, requiring communication systems and transportation networks that can function during periods of intensive conflict and maintain effectiveness when facing enemies whose capabilities include disruption of conventional technology. Supply lines must extend into regions where normal hyperspace travel becomes unreliable and where survival depends on advanced preparation rather than rapid response. Intelligence gathering operations expand into regions where Republic agents have never operated, their missions requiring skills and equipment designed for environments where conventional reconnaissance becomes impossible and where contact with far outsider advanced forces creates risks that exceed anything in standard operational protocols. These operatives must balance information gathering with survival in regions where the boundaries between known and unknown space become fluid and dangerous. The psychological preparation of civilian populations for conflicts that will challenge every assumption about the nature of warfare and survival requires information campaigns that balance honesty about threats with maintenance of social stability during transition periods that mark fundamental changes in galactic civilization. Citizens who have lived through decades of civil war must now prepare for challenges that dwarf previous conflicts in scope and significance. The Force-sensitive individuals scattered throughout the galaxy receive training in techniques that emphasize tactical perception and cultural understanding rather than combat abilities, their development shaped by recognition that survival against far outsider invasion will require enhanced pattern recognition and intuitive understanding of alien psychology. These individuals serve as bridges between conventional military thinking and the mystical insights necessary for effective response to enemies whose own capabilities blur the boundaries between technology and spiritual manipulation. The financial resources necessary for defensive preparation strain governmental budgets and require economic coordination between traditional competitors, their cooperation fostered by recognition that monetary concerns become irrelevant if galactic civilization fails to survive the approaching crisis. Investment priorities shift toward projects that serve collective survival rather than individual profit, creating economic structures that transcend normal commercial relationships. As these preparations accelerate throughout the galaxy, time becomes the most precious resource available to planners who must accomplish in decades what previous civilizations required centuries to complete. Every decision carries consequences that will determine not just military effectiveness, but the fundamental survival of intelligent life in regions of the universe that have supported civilization since before recorded history began. The gathering storm approaches not from within familiar political boundaries, but from regions where space itself operates according to different physical laws and where enemies prepare who possess understanding of galactic civilizations accumulated across multiple invasion cycles. The unity forged through recognition of this cosmic threat will determine whether the galaxy's diverse species can transcend their traditional conflicts and achieve cooperation sufficient for survival against challenges that exceed anything in their collective historical experience. The sensor arrays positioned along the galaxy's rim detect anomalies that chill the blood and confound the finest scientific minds in Republic space. energy signatures that operate according to principles unknown to core world physics, and gravitational disturbances that suggest the approach of vessels whose mass and construction transcend anything in galactic databases. These readings arrive through emergency communication channels that crackle with interference patterns, indicating proximity to phenomena that conventional technology struggles to comprehend or analyze. The first visual confirmation emerges from deep space reconnaissance missions that venture beyond the safety of established hyperspace routes into regions where navigation becomes treacherous and where the boundaries between known and unknown space dissolve into cosmic uncertainty. The images transmitted back to Republic intelligence centers show vessels that blur the distinction between living organisms and mechanical constructions, their hulls pulsing with biological rhythms, while their weapons systems incorporate technologies that seem to grow and adapt in response to environmental conditions. Grand Admiral Thrawn's analysis of these initial contact reports demonstrates tactical thinking that transcends normal military doctrine, his assessments incorporating cultural knowledge and strategic principles developed through millennia of preparation for exactly these circumstances. The holographic displays in his command center show not conventional battle formations, but three-dimensional representations of enemy psychology and strategic thinking patterns that reveal approaches to warfare fundamentally different from anything within galactic experience. The Yuuzhan Vong, as ancient records identify them, represent the culmination of evolutionary processes that occurred beyond the galaxy's protective boundaries in regions where life developed according to principles that challenge every assumption about biological development and technological advancement. Their civilization spans millions of years of conquest and expansion, their capabilities honed through conflicts that consumed entire galactic clusters and transformed the cosmic landscape across regions of space so vast that conventional minds struggle to comprehend their scope. The biotechnology that characterizes Yuuzhan Vong vessels and weapons systems operates through living processes that adapt and evolve in response to defensive measures, creating tactical challenges that render conventional military responses inadequate or counterproductive. Their ships heal damage through biological regeneration, while their weapons systems learn from each engagement, incorporating understanding of enemy capabilities into evolutionary cycles that produce increasingly effective offensive and defensive capabilities. The immunity to force-based attacks that these extragalactic invaders possess stems not from technological shielding, but from fundamental aspects of their biology and psychology that exist outside the cosmic energies that bind galactic life together. Their origins in regions where the Force itself operates according to different principles created beings whose very existence challenges the mystical foundations that underlie Jedi and Sith traditions, making them nearly invisible to Force-sensitive perception while rendering them immune to telekinetic manipulation and precognitive detection. The psychological profiles that emerge from initial contact reports reveal minds shaped by millions of years of conquest and expansion, beings whose worldview incorporates concepts of pain and sacrifice that transcend anything in galactic cultural traditions. Their approach to warfare emphasizes not mere victory, but total transformation of conquered territories and populations, their methods designed to eliminate not just military resistance, but the cultural and biological foundations that define civilized existence. The strategic implications spread through Republic command centers like shockwaves from colliding hypermatter reactors, each analysis revealing new layers of challenge that exceed everything in military planning databases. The Yuuzhan Vong fleet formations demonstrate coordination across distances that span multiple star systems, while their tactical approaches incorporate understanding of galactic civilizations that suggests surveillance and preparation extending across geological time periods. Commander Voss studies intelligence reports that reveal the scope of Yuuzhan Vong preparations for galactic invasion, their advanced scouts having observed and analyzed Republic and Imperial forces for decades while remaining undetected by conventional sensors and reconnaissance methods. Their knowledge of galactic military capabilities, political structures, and cultural vulnerabilities exceeds anything available to domestic intelligence services, giving them tactical advantages that conventional strategic thinking cannot counter through superior numbers or advanced technology. The revelation that transforms understanding completely emerges from communications intercepted during the first engagement between Republic forces and Yuuzhan Vong scout vessels, transmissions that reveal not exploration or reconnaissance, but the final phase of invasion preparations that have been underway for centuries. The main invasion fleet approaches from regions beyond current sensor range, their vessels numbering in quantities that dwarf every military force in galactic history, while their capabilities transcend anything that defensive preparations have anticipated. Mara Jade's force sensitivity provides insights into the spiritual dimensions of this cosmic threat, her perceptions revealing disturbances in the cosmic energies that suggest not merely military invasion, but fundamental assault on the mystical forces that bind galactic life together. The Yuuzhan Vong presence creates zones of emptiness in the Force itself, regions where the cosmic energies that support all life become disrupted or eliminated entirely, threatening not just individual survival but the spiritual foundations of galactic civilization. The tactical analyses that emerge from initial engagements demonstrate capabilities that exceed every projection in defensive planning databases, Yuuzhan Vong vessels exhibiting performance characteristics that transcend conventional physics, while their crews display coordination and tactical thinking that suggests not individual intelligence but collective consciousness that spans entire invasion fleets. Their weapons systems adapt to defensive measures within minutes of first contact, while their vessels regenerate damage through biological processes that operate at speeds exceeding mechanical repair capabilities. The cultural assessments that Thrawn provides, through analysis of Yuuzhan Vong, artistic expressions, and tactical preferences, reveal psychological foundations based on concepts of pain as spiritual purification and conquest as biological imperative, worldviews that render conventional diplomatic approaches meaningless while suggesting that peaceful coexistence represents impossibility rather than merely political challenge. Their civilization views the galaxy not as collection of independent species, but as ecosystem requiring fundamental transformation to serve purposes that span cosmic timescales. The realization that galactic survival depends not on military victory, but on fundamental transformation of defensive approaches, spreads through command centers with the force of religious revelation, each strategic assessment revealing new requirements for unity and cooperation that transcend anything attempted in galactic history. The Yuuzhan Vong invasion will test not just military capabilities, but the fundamental capacity for adaptation and evolution that defines intelligent life itself. The communication networks that connect defensive preparations across the galaxy carry reports of Yuuzhan Vong capabilities that challenge every assumption about the nature of warfare and the possibilities for survival against enemies whose resources and strategic thinking transcend normal limitations. Their biological weapons systems create environmental changes that transform planetary ecosystems, while their psychological warfare techniques exploit cultural vulnerabilities that conventional intelligence services never identified or addressed. The timeline calculations that emerge from analysis of Yuuzhan Vong, approach vectors and fleet deployment patterns reveal invasion schedules that allow minimal time for completion of defensive preparations, their arrival coordinated to exploit the political divisions and military weaknesses that characterize current galactic civilization. The main invasion force will reach the galaxy's edge within months rather than years, their timing calculated to maximize strategic advantages while minimizing opportunities for effective resistance. The deeper implications of this cosmic threat extend beyond immediate military concerns into questions about the meaning of civilization itself and the responsibilities that intelligent species bear toward each other in the face of challenges that transcend individual survival instincts. The Yuuzhan Vong invasion represents not political conflict but existential test of whether galactic life possesses the unity and adaptability necessary for survival against forces that challenge the very foundations of organized existence. The ancient prophecies preserved in Sith holocrons and Jedi archives find their fulfillment in circumstances that exceed even their most apocalyptic visions. Their warnings about extragalactic threats proving inadequate for the scope of challenges that now approach from regions where normal concepts of space and time become unreliable. The galaxy faces not conquest but transformation into something that serves purposes spanning millions of years of evolution and expansion by beings whose capabilities transcend current understanding of what life itself can become. As the magnitude of this revelation settles into consciousness throughout Republic command structures, the stars visible through observation ports no longer represent familiar territory marked by trade routes and colonial boundaries, but frontier regions where the final battle for galactic survival will determine whether intelligent life continues to exist in forms recognizable to current civilizations. The approaching darkness carries with it the weight of cosmic judgment on whether the galaxy's diverse species can achieve unity sufficient for survival against challenges that exceed everything in their collective historical experience. The battle begins not with traditional fleet engagements, but with reality itself seeming to bend and twist as Yuuzhan Vong vessels emerge from hyperspace through methods that operate beyond conventional understanding of dimensional physics. Their ships appear as living things, pulsing with organic rhythms and bristling with weapon systems that grow and adapt in real time, their hulls bearing scars and modifications that speak to millions of years of conquest across galactic distances that strain comprehension. Thrawn's flagship positions itself at the center of the combined fleet formation, Republic Mon Calamari cruisers flanked by Imperial Star Destroyers and Chiss vessels whose designs incorporate technologies that few beings in the galaxy have ever witnessed. The tactical coordination required to merge such diverse military traditions into effective combat formations represents achievement that transcends normal strategic thinking, unity forged through recognition of threats that dwarf all previous conflicts in scope and significance. The opening salvos reveal immediately that conventional weapons prove inadequate against Yuuzhan Vong biotechnology, turbolaser batteries and ion cannons having minimal effect on vessels whose living hulls absorb energy and convert damage into biological material for rapid healing and adaptation. The enemy ships respond with weapons that seem to grow from their surfaces like malignant tumors, launching projectiles that seek targets with predatory intelligence, while adapting their trajectories to counter defensive maneuvers. Luke Skywalker's presence among the combined fleet provides insights that conventional sensors cannot detect, his force sensitivity, revealing the terrible emptiness that surrounds Yuuzhan Vong vessels like zones of spiritual vacuum, where the cosmic energies that bind all life together simply cease to exist. His attempts to influence the battle through telekinetic manipulation prove futile, the invaders existing outside the mystical forces that have shaped galactic civilization since the dawn of intelligent life. The Salamiri technology that Thrawn incorporates into defensive strategies creates unexpected tactical advantages, the force-dampening creatures neutralizing not Yuuzhan Vong capabilities, but rather eliminating the spiritual confusion that their presence creates among Republic and Imperial personnel. Within Salamiri influence zones, crews can function without the psychological disorientation that accompanies proximity to beings who exist outside normal cosmic order. The first breakthrough comes when Chiss navigators demonstrate abilities that transcend normal force sensitivity, their specialized talents allowing them to predict Yuuzhan Vong fleet movements through analysis of gravitational disturbances and hyperspace anomalies that their vessels create. These predictions enable Thrawn to anticipate enemy tactical maneuvers while positioning combined fleet elements for maximum effectiveness against opponents whose capabilities exceed everything in galactic military experience. Mara Jade's role in the engagement transcends her previous service as Emperor's Hand, her unique understanding of both light and dark side techniques providing tactical insights that bridge the gap between mystical perception and practical military application. Her ability to function despite Yuuzhan Vong force immunity makes her invaluable for reconnaissance missions and close-range combat operations where conventional force users become helpless. The hybrid weapon systems developed through cooperation between Republic engineers, Imperial technicians, and Chiss scientists prove more effective than traditional armaments, their designs incorporating biological components that can adapt to Yuuzhan Vong defensive measures while maintaining technological reliability that purely organic systems cannot match. These weapons represent synthesis of knowledge that spans multiple civilizations and challenges traditional boundaries between different approaches to military technology. The battle's progression reveals patterns that demonstrate both Yuuzhan Vong tactical sophistication and the effectiveness of combined galactic resistance, enemy formations adapting to defensive measures while allied forces coordinate responses that transcend normal species limitations. Each engagement provides learning opportunities that benefit both sides, creating evolutionary pressure that drives rapid tactical development and strategic innovation. Admiral Akbar's command of Mon Calamari vessels demonstrates how traditional Republic naval doctrine adapts to challenges that exceed anything in previous military experience. His strategies incorporating Thrawn's cultural analysis techniques while maintaining tactical flexibility that allows rapid response to unexpected enemy capabilities. The integration of different command philosophies creates effectiveness that neither approach could achieve independently. The personal cost of this first major engagement becomes apparent as casualty reports arrive from across the combined fleet, their numbers representing not just military losses, but sacrifice of individuals whose training and experience cannot be replaced within time frames that approaching threats will allow. Each death carries weight that transcends normal military calculations, representing irreplaceable knowledge and capabilities that the galaxy's defense can ill afford to lose. The breakthrough moment arrives when concentrated fire from multiple fleet elements succeeds in overwhelming a Yuuzhan Vong vessel's biological healing capabilities, the enemy ship's destruction providing first proof that invader forces possess limitations despite their seemingly impossible advantages. The analysis of debris recovered from this victory reveals biological processes and technological principles that offer insights into Yuuzhan Vong vulnerabilities and strategic weaknesses. The enemy response to their first significant loss demonstrates coordination that spans the entire invasion fleet, reinforcement vessels arriving through hyperspace methods that allow rapid deployment while maintaining tactical coherence across distances that would fragment normal military formations. Their ability to coordinate such responses suggests command and control systems that operate through principles unknown to galactic military science. The psychological impact of witnessing Yuuzhan Vong capabilities affects personnel throughout the combined fleet, crew members struggling to process encounters with enemies whose very existence challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of life and intelligence. Training programs developed during pre-invasion preparations prove essential for maintaining morale and combat effectiveness when facing opponents whose psychology transcends normal understanding of sentient behavior. The tactical lessons learned during this first major engagement transform strategic planning for subsequent operations, revealing both effective techniques for combating Yuuzhan Vong forces and limitations that defensive preparations must acknowledge. The enemy's biological adaptation capabilities require constant innovation in weapons and tactics, while their force immunity necessitates reliance on conventional senses and strategic thinking rather than mystical perception. The communication networks that coordinate fleet operations across multiple star systems prove vulnerable to Yuuzhan-Vong interference techniques, their biological technology capable of disrupting electronic systems while remaining immune to conventional jamming and countermeasures. Maintaining command coordination requires backup methods that incorporate both Imperial encryption protocols and CIS communication techniques that operate through principles unknown to enemy intelligence gathering. The logistical challenges of supporting combined fleet operations in regions beyond normal supply routes create requirements for resource management that transcend anything attempted during previous galactic conflicts. Fuel consumption, ammunition expenditure, and equipment maintenance must be coordinated across diverse technological systems while maintaining combat readiness in environments where enemy capabilities make conventional resupply dangerous or impossible. The intelligence gathered during combat operations reveals Yuuzhan-Vong's strategic thinking that incorporates understanding of galactic civilizations accumulated across centuries of observation and preparation. Their tactical responses demonstrate knowledge of Republic, Imperial, and CIS military doctrines that exceeds anything available to domestic intelligence services, suggesting surveillance operations that penetrated every aspect of galactic military planning. The first engagement's conclusion brings temporary respite that allows assessment of lessons learned and preparation for subsequent operations, though reconnaissance reports indicate that main Yuuzhan-Vong invasion forces continue approaching through hyperspace routes that will bring them within Republic territory within weeks rather than months. The time available for implementing tactical improvements and strategic adaptations proves insufficient for addressing all vulnerabilities that this initial contact revealed. The combined fleet's withdrawal to defensive positions deeper within galactic territory occurs under constant harassment from Yuuzhan-Vong pursuit forces, their biological vessels demonstrating endurance and speed capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of propulsion systems and crew requirements. The enemy's ability to maintain aggressive pursuit while coordinating with reinforcement elements suggests tactical doctrines that operate according to principles that transcend normal military limitations. As the first major engagement in what historians will remember as the galaxy's greatest existential crisis draws to its conclusion, the stars themselves seem to burn with different light, their familiar patterns now marking not peaceful trade routes, but battlefields where the survival of intelligent life itself hangs in the balance of decisions and sacrifices that will echo across cosmic time. The aftermath of first contact with the Yuuzhan-Vong transforms galactic civilization in ways that peacetime diplomacy never could have achieved, traditional enemies finding themselves bound together by recognition of threats that transcend all previous political divisions and ideological conflicts. The emergency protocols that emerge from these desperate circumstances create governmental structures that blend Republic democratic principles with Imperial efficiency and CIS long-term strategic thinking, forming institutions designed to coordinate defense across species boundaries that have separated civilizations since the dawn of galactic history. The Galactic Defense Council convenes in chambers that incorporate security measures from multiple military traditions, its sessions protected by energy shields that combine Republic transparency with Imperial secrecy and CIS information compartmentalization. Representatives from worlds that have never previously cooperated find themselves working toward common goals while maintaining cultural identities that span the diversity of intelligent life within known space. Thrawn's appointment as Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces occurs not through political maneuvering, but through recognition of tactical capabilities that transcend normal leadership qualifications, his strategic genius and cultural understanding making him uniquely qualified for coordinating military responses that require integration of diverse species and technologies. His acceptance of this responsibility represents commitment to galactic survival that supersedes any loyalty to specific political ideologies or racial preferences. The integration of Imperial military assets into combined defense forces requires diplomatic negotiations that bridge decades of hostility and mistrust, former enemies working together through recognition that their survival depends on cooperation rather than continued conflict. Imperial officers trained in authoritarian command structures adapt to operational environments that incorporate Republic democratic decision-making and CIS consensus building, creating hybrid leadership approaches that prove more effective than any single military tradition. Mon Mothma's role in these transformations extends beyond her previous political responsibilities into realms of interspecies diplomacy that challenge every assumption about the possibilities for unity among galactic civilizations. Her ability to forge agreements between traditional enemies while maintaining respect for cultural differences becomes essential for creating institutional frameworks that can survive the stress of prolonged conflict against enemies whose capabilities transcend normal understanding. The technological synthesis that emerges from cooperation between different species creates weapons and defensive systems that incorporate the best aspects of Republic innovation, Imperial engineering, and CIS scientific sophistication. Research facilities that span multiple star systems coordinate development projects that would have required decades under normal circumstances, their progress accelerated by recognition that survival depends on rapid adaptation to threats that exceed all previous military challenges. The economic transformations required to support galactic defense efforts create financial structures that transcend traditional boundaries between government and private enterprise. Their organization designed to maximize resource allocation while maintaining incentives for innovation and efficiency. Industrial complexes that once competed for military contracts now coordinate production schedules according to strategic priorities that serve collective survival rather than individual profit margins. Luke Skywalker's establishment of new Jedi training programs incorporates lessons learned from encounters with Force-immune enemies, his curriculum emphasizing tactical perception and cultural understanding rather than combat techniques that prove ineffective against Yuuzhan Vong biology. These programs produce Force users whose abilities serve practical military purposes while maintaining spiritual connections that provide psychological stability during prolonged exposure to enemies who exist outside normal cosmic order. The communication networks that coordinate defense activities across galactic distances incorporate backup systems and encryption protocols that ensure operational security despite Yuuzhan Vong interference capabilities. Their design drawing upon Imperial intelligence techniques, Republic transparency requirements, and CIS information management principles. These networks prove essential for maintaining unity among diverse species whose natural inclinations favor independence over collective action. The cultural exchanges that occur through forced cooperation between traditional enemies create understanding that peacetime diplomacy never achieved, representatives from different species learning to appreciate perspectives and capabilities that previous political structures ignored or suppressed. These interactions produce not just military cooperation but genuine appreciation for diversity that strengthens galactic civilization's ability to adapt and survive under extreme circumstances. The memorial installations that commemorate sacrifices made during initial contact operations serve purposes that transcend normal military honors, their design incorporating artistic elements from multiple species while creating spaces for reflection that acknowledge costs that cannot be calculated through conventional metrics. These monuments remind surviving personnel that their efforts serve not just immediate tactical objectives, but preservation of cultural heritage that spans millennia of civilized development. The diplomatic protocols that govern interactions with species beyond current galactic boundaries create frameworks for potential cooperation with civilizations whose existence remained unknown until Yuuzhan Vong invasion prompted expansion of reconnaissance operations into regions previously considered uninhabitable or inaccessible. These protocols balance caution about unknown capabilities with recognition that survival may require alliances that transcend current understanding of galactic geography. The educational reforms that prepare civilian populations for existence in a galaxy under siege emphasize skills and knowledge that serve both immediate survival needs and long-term cultural preservation. Their curricula designed to maintain civilized values while adapting to circumstances that challenge every assumption about normal social organization. These programs ensure that galactic civilization retains essential characteristics even while transforming in response to existential threats. The medical innovations that emerge from study of Yuuzhan Vong, biological processes, create treatments and preventive measures that address both direct combat injuries and psychological trauma associated with exposure to enemies whose very existence challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of life itself. These developments prove essential for maintaining combat effectiveness among personnel whose duties require prolonged contact with forces that operate outside normal understanding. The intelligence operations that monitor Yuuzhan Vong activities throughout galactic territory require coordination between agencies whose traditional secrecy and compartmentalization must be balanced against operational needs for information sharing and tactical cooperation. These activities produce understanding of enemy capabilities and intentions while maintaining security protocols that prevent infiltration or manipulation by opponents whose own intelligence gathering transcends conventional espionage techniques. The legal frameworks that govern emergency powers and military authority during existential crisis create judicial structures that balance individual rights with collective survival needs, their precedents establishing principles that preserve democratic values while allowing rapid response to threats that conventional governmental processes cannot address effectively. These frameworks ensure that emergency measures serve temporary purposes rather than permanent transformation of political institutions. The industrial mobilization that supports defense efforts creates employment opportunities that span multiple species and skill levels while maintaining safety standards and working conditions that reflect civilized values rather than mere utilitarian efficiency. These programs demonstrate that galactic civilization can adapt to extreme circumstances without abandoning moral principles that define intelligent life's relationship to individual dignity and collective responsibility. The scientific research that analyzes Yuuzhan Vong technology and biology produces knowledge that advances understanding of life processes and physical principles that operate beyond current theoretical frameworks, discoveries that will benefit galactic civilization long after immediate military threats have been resolved. These investigations reveal possibilities for technological development that transcend anything previously imagined while raising questions about the responsibilities that accompany such knowledge. The strategic reserves that accumulate through coordinated resource management create capabilities for sustained operations that extend beyond immediate tactical requirements, their distribution designed to support continued resistance even if primary government centers fall to enemy occupation. These preparations acknowledge that survival may require adaptation to circumstances that current planning cannot fully anticipate while maintaining hope for eventual victory and reconstruction. As the new galactic order takes shape through necessity rather than political philosophy, the transformation reflects not abandonment of civilized values, but their application to circumstances that test every assumption about the possibilities for cooperation and survival among diverse species. The unity forged through recognition of common threats creates institutions that transcend previous limitations while preserving essential characteristics that define galactic civilization's relationship to individual freedom and collective responsibility. The observation deck aboard the command station that orbits beyond the galaxy's visible edge offers views of star fields that stretch into infinite darkness, their gentle luminescence marking the boundaries between known space and regions where ancient enemies prepare for invasions that span geological timescales. Here, in chambers designed for contemplation rather than tactical planning, the architects of galactic unity gather to witness the slow turning of cosmic wheels that measure time in eras rather than individual lifespans. Grand Admiral Thrawn stands before transperisteel barriers that reveal the vastness of space itself, his red eyes reflecting starlight that has traveled for millennia to reach these distant observation points. His presence brings not the urgency of immediate military crisis, but the patient watchfulness of a guardian whose responsibilities extend across centuries of preparation and vigilance. The datapad in his hands contains not battle plans, but poetry written in languages that span multiple species, artistic expressions that capture the beauty found in unity, forged through shared purpose. The defense platforms that drift in stately orbits around this listening post represent technologies that blend Republic innovation with Imperial efficiency and Chiss tactical sophistication. Their systems operating with the quiet competence of mechanisms designed for extended operation without requiring constant maintenance or oversight. These installations embody the principle that effective defense emerges not from dramatic gestures, but from patient preparation that spans decades of careful planning and resource allocation. The monitoring stations that extend sensing capabilities deep into the unknown regions transmit data through networks that operate at the speed of light across distances that dwarf individual solar systems, their signals carrying information about cosmic phenomena and distant civilizations whose activities may herald the approach of threats that current generations will never directly encounter. These listening posts represent humanity's commitment to vigilance that transcends individual lifespans and political boundaries. Commander Voss reviews reports that arrive through encrypted channels from reconnaissance missions that venture into regions where conventional navigation becomes impossible and where survival depends on skills that merge scientific training with mystical intuition. Her analysis of intelligence gathered through years of patient observation reveals patterns that suggest not immediate danger, but gradual preparation for challenges that will test future generations in ways that current understanding cannot anticipate. The crew members who maintain these distant installations represent volunteers from across the galaxy's diverse civilizations, their service motivated not by immediate rewards, but by recognition that their vigilance protects worlds and species that they may never visit, but whose survival depends on early warning systems that operate beyond the boundaries of familiar space. These individuals embody the principle that true heroism emerges through quiet service rather than dramatic sacrifice. The communication arrays that maintain contact with galactic civilization operate through quantum entanglement technologies that provide instantaneous transmission across cosmic distances, their signals carrying not military dispatches, but cultural exchanges that preserve diversity while fostering unity among species separated by vast expanses of space and time. These networks represent recognition that survival requires both tactical coordination and preservation of the artistic traditions that define civilized existence. Mara Jade tends hydroponic gardens that provide fresh food for personnel stationed in regions where supply convoys arrive infrequently and where self-sufficiency determines survival during extended periods of isolation from galactic civilization. Her work with growing plants represents meditation on cycles of life and renewal that continue regardless of cosmic threats, finding peace in activities that connect individuals to biological rhythms that transcend political boundaries and military concerns. The archives housed within these installations preserve knowledge gathered through generations of contact with civilizations that exist beyond galactic boundaries, their data storage systems protecting information that may prove essential for challenges that future generations will encounter when current defenders have passed into memory. These repositories represent recognition that effective preparation requires preservation of wisdom that spans longer periods than individual biological lifespans allow. The training simulators that prepare new personnel for service in regions where conventional military doctrine becomes inadequate operate through immersive technologies that recreate conditions found in environments where space itself behaves according to principles unknown to core world physics. These systems represent attempts to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical experience in realms where survival depends on adaptation to circumstances that exceed normal understanding. The recreational facilities that provide respite for personnel stationed in locations where entertainment options remain limited by necessity rather than choice incorporate activities that foster unity while preserving individual identity. They're programs designed to maintain morale during assignments that require years of service in environments where contact with home becomes infrequent. These spaces represent recognition that effective defense requires attention to psychological needs as well as tactical requirements. The medical facilities that treat conditions unique to extended service in regions where cosmic radiation and exotic phenomena create health challenges unknown to conventional galactic medicine, operate through research programs that advance understanding of how biological systems adapt to environments that exist at the boundaries of known space. These installations represent commitment to caring for individuals whose service extends beyond normal duty requirements. Luke Skywalker meditates in chambers where Force energies flow according to patterns undisturbed by the conflicts and chaos that characterize more populated regions of the galaxy. His contemplations focused on understanding cosmic cycles that operate according to principles that transcend individual concerns or species-specific worldviews. His presence brings not supernatural solutions to tactical problems, but wisdom that emerges through patient observation of forces that bind all existence together. The manufacturing facilities that produce replacement components and emergency supplies operate through automated systems that require minimal human oversight while maintaining production schedules adapted to the irregular supply requirements of installations that exist far from normal commercial networks. These systems represent technological solutions that balance efficiency with reliability in environments where equipment failure can determine survival. The diplomatic protocols that govern interaction with species encountered during reconnaissance missions beyond galactic boundaries operate according to principles that emphasize cultural respect, while maintaining security requirements necessary for protecting information about galactic defensive capabilities. These procedures represent recognition that effective intelligence gathering requires skills that transcend military training to include anthropological understanding and linguistic capabilities. As the years pass and the watch continues, the individuals who serve at these distant posts develop perspectives that transcend normal temporal boundaries, their understanding shaped by service that measures significance in decades rather than individual achievements or immediate rewards. They become guardians whose vigilance protects not just current civilizations, but future generations whose existence depends on preparations that span longer periods than most beings can comprehend. The stars that wheel overhead in their ancient patterns serve as reminders that cosmic time operates according to scales that dwarf individual lifespans, while connecting all existence through gravitational forces and electromagnetic radiation that transcend political boundaries and species differences. These celestial bodies represent both the vast indifference of the universe and the precious fragility of life that emerges within environments capable of supporting consciousness and civilization. The peace that settles over these installations emerges not from absence of threat, but from recognition that preparation and vigilance provide foundations for security that transcends immediate military concerns. Their effectiveness measured not through dramatic victories, but through quiet competence that prevents crises rather than resolving them through conflict. This tranquility represents achievement of balance between readiness and serenity that characterizes mature civilizations. In the gentle hum of monitoring equipment, and the soft whisper of life support systems, in the distant glow of stars that mark pathways through infinite darkness, and the quiet conversations of beings from different worlds who serve common purposes, the galaxy finds peace, not through conquest of its enemies, but through unity that transcends traditional boundaries. while maintaining vigilance against challenges that approach from realms where time itself operates according to different principles. The journey into these galactic mysteries continues through each shift change and communication from distant worlds, through each report that confirms the continuing safety of civilizations that sleep peacefully, while Guardians maintain their eternal watch at the edges of known space, preserving the delicate balance that allows life and consciousness to flourish in a universe filled with wonders that exceed imagination and dangers that require wisdom accumulated across generations of patient service.